how they're not going to give him another one. And they've now found out that his new liver is dried up. So pretty much he's going to die soon.
Shit, last time I saw him, he looked good, you know?
He still looks good. But recently he actually fell out of a chair and he hurt his back a little bit, so they did a CAT scan on his back. And they told them when they reviewed the results of the CAT scan that his back was fine, but his liver's dried up.
Oh, really?
So,
damn.
I mean, he's defied the odds in the past.
Right.
Who knows? But I got to hang out with him for a week, and he's a great person. Because I got the same problem, and he's trying to. He hooked me up with his doctors in Phoenix.
Oh, really?
Because they're the best doctors to take care of it.
Right.
So they're going to. I got a bunch of tests done there and more tests done here. And once they get and review the results, I'm going to find out if his doctors will take care of my problem. Because with me, they can cure it. But with him, the treatment is like chemotherapy. So he'll die from the treatment, so they can't try and cure it.
Right.
So, anyways. All right, so you mind if I start?
No.
All right, so can you tell us a bit about your amateur wrestling career?
Well, won the state championship in Michigan. Got recruited by, a lot of colleges, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. A lot of the big colleges, but I wanted to stay close to home, so I went to U of M. And then at U of M, I was NCAA All-American, so. But I went to college, had a good time, so. And I had a good time, but.
So was that your biggest accomplishment in amateur wrestling?
Looking back, getting recruited by all those colleges I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time because, I was winning, but looking back, it's just to get a scholarship from Michigan was a pretty big deal, But yeah, I had a great time in college,
Were you a fan of pro wrestling growing up?
No, I never watched.
What?
Well, I lived in a small town, so we didn't really have too many channels,
Right.
And then, but no, I never really watched it. Actually, my grandfather did go to a couple of wrestling matches in Saginaw, but my dad ended up telling me that he was a big wrestling fan. But I never watched wrestling. The time I started watching wrestling was in college, when it started getting big,
And that's when you figured out it was something that you might be good at?
Well, I didn't know anything about professional wrestling at the time, so I watched it and I said, man, I could beat those motherfuckers up, So that's really how I got into it. And then my brother was 2 years older than I was, so he went up to Minnesota and trained with Brad Reinigans,
Right.
Because Reinigans was an amateur wrestler too, Actually, Reinigans and my assistant coach were good friends, and my grad assistant coach was the first American to win Greco-Roman gold medal for the United States, so they were pretty close,
So what was your training like going into pro wrestling? It's pretty easy now if you want to be a wrestler, but in those days it was a little tougher.
No, actually, back then it was. See, my brother went through Reinigan's camp, so they trained pretty hard, Back then they weeded out, all the weak guys through his camp, But I got trained by a totally different guy. I started wrestling for Dick the Bruiser, who was a big name back in the '60s and that, and he was still wrestling at the time. I started wrestling in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio area, So that's where I started wrestling, My first match was against Bulldog Don Kemp.
He was popular in the
yeah,
Chiefs.
with the Fabulous Kangaroos, him and Costello.
Yeah.
They were a pretty big name back in the day, you know. So that was who my first match was against, you know. So I took a totally different path than my brother did, you know, because I mean he went to Reiner's camp, but then we went to Canada and tried to get it, you know, with Dino Bravo, and that didn't work out. And then he started down in Louisiana, you know. So he told me I really didn't have to go that way. And I picked up wrestling, professional wrestling, pretty easy, you know. So I just went through that, took that avenue, you know.
And before long, you already had made it to WCW. What was that like for you? What were the discussions to bring you into WCW, and how did you feel getting a job with a major company?
Well, first from Dick the Bruiser, I went down to Tennessee with Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett, and that was actually good because for a whole year I wrestled every day, you know, Monday through Friday, you know, 7 days a week, you know. So and that was good training back then, you know, because there wasn't a whole lot of territories. So at least, I mean, we didn't get paid shit, but I got to work every day, you know. So by the time I started with the NWA, you know, I was ready to go, you know. So, and then signed with Ted Turner, and he changed it to WCW, you know. So, you know. So
you actually joined before it became owned by Ted Turner?
No, I joined when Ted Turner owned it,
okay.
But it just it was still the NWA, and then later on they changed it to WCW, make it a, you know, because, you know, NWA was more national, you know, WCW was worldwide, you know.
Right.
So.
And what led to you starting to team up with your brother? Was that kind of planned before you were hired, or did it...
Well, that was our original plan, you know. Mine and my brothers, we always wanted to wrestle together, you know. That was our thing, you know, because there hadn't been a whole lot of brother tag teams, you know. I mean, the Briscoes and the Funks, you know. So we were ready to make our mark as a tag team. I really had no interest in doing singles at the time, you know.
And who were some of the feuds you remember having in those days in WCW?
You know, back then it was like, you know, the Road Warriors, you know, Doom, you know, Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. They were, you know, both Ron and Butch were good athletes, you know.
Yeah.
So we had good matches with those guys, you know. And you know,
did it ever get rough with you guys and the Road Warriors in there?
No, because the Road Warriors, they couldn't wrestle, you know, amateur wrestling, you know. We'd tie them up, you know. I mean, they were Huck and Hannibal. They were good guys. They were big guys, but they couldn't wrestle.
And back in those days, you had a lot of TV matches thrown in with guys that didn't know how to wrestle. What was that like? It must have been frustrating at times.
Well, you gotta remember back then it was like you really didn't have all your TV matches were your base against job guys, you know, and a lot of those guys seemed like they came off the street, you know. So, you know, a couple of times when they fuck something up, we'd beat the hell out of them, throw them around, you know.
Did you ever wrestle for Bill Watts? Was he ever in charge of WCW?
Yeah, he was a jack-off. He didn't last long. He tried to bring his bullshit in there. He was, you know.
So you didn't get along with him?
No, I thought we would, you know, because my brother started out down in Louisiana with him, you know. And I thought he would, you know, not so much me. I thought he'd treat my brother better, you know.
Yeah.
But he treated it because he was getting them cut off every contract guys made. He, you know, tried to lower the contracts. He'd get some money off it, you know. And I didn't think he would, you know, but he was a fucking prick. The biggest, you know, Wahoo told me he was, you know, he's a piece of shit, you know. So I thought we'd get along, but we didn't. He was a piece of shit.
Now,
and he fucked himself, you know. He's a freaking idiot. He got himself fired at WCW, you know. By that time, we had already left, you know.
In later years, ended up not liking Ric Flair in real life personally. Did you get along with him around the time of your first WCW run?
Well, I didn't know him. I mean, I knew a little bit of him. Like I said, I started for Dick the Bruiser, and they were going to bring me down to NWA for a tryout. And Dick the Bruiser said to me, when you get there, you drop your bags. You tell Ric Flair to carry your bags. So I didn't know nothing about ribs. I said, all right, I'll do it. And Bulldog Don Ken on the way home, I told him, oh shit, you can't do that. They'll fire you. Because he said the reason Dick told me that was because that's how Flair got into wrestling up in Minnesota. He was carrying guys' bags, to the arena and that. But everything I've said about Flair was, been documented, and everybody thought it was like, oh, it was a personal thing. It's like, no, go on ESPN.com, go to Grantland. You find out what a piece of shit he really is. I mean, it goes into in depth more than what Wahoo or anybody else told me about him. I mean, everybody thought him and Wahoo brought Flair down into the NWA. So Wahoo felt like he at least owed him something. But he never returned the favor. When Wahoo was older, he wanted to still get in the ring every once in a while, and Flair wouldn't. But he treated everybody like thought every guys that owed him a favor, he treated like shit. He did that to a lot of guys.
So Flair, one of the reasons he left WCW was Jim Herd. Were you around during the Jim Herd era of WCW?
Yeah. I got along with Herd. And one of the funnier things Herd said to me, he was like, "Shit, I'm the same age as Ric Flair, but I look better than him," and he did. He looked better than Flair. Flair had saggy skin and looked like shit.
And what led to you going to Japan for the first time?
Well, that was through WCW. We went over there, and I think it was 1990. Tokyo Dome was like 70,000 people. We wrestled Hase and Sasaki. I mean, it was a good time. It was pretty amazing wrestling in front of 70,000 people.
And you've always been known for doing a lot of shoot style moves that are pretty popular in Japan. Did you put a lot of thought into coming up with those moves, or were some of them just spur of the moment stuff?
No, everything I've come up with, I've thought of. I thought of the Frankensteiner back when I was wrestling in Tennessee area, but I never brought it out to WCW. And then a lot of my suplexes was incorporated through the amateur style. And then the Steiner screwdriver I thought of. Which got over big in Japan too. But yeah, a lot of stuff I gave a lot of thought to. Like when we first started, like a lot of people weren't going out, doing moves off the top. I mean, they'd do a cross body or something off the top rope. But my brother and I were doing the DDTs off the top rope. He'd put him on the shoulder, I'd DDT him, then he'd bulldog somebody off when I had the guy on my shoulder. So there's a lot of stuff that we came up with.
What do you think of everyone using the Frankensteiner now? Are you complimented by it that it's become such a common move in wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a move I invented, and it's a pretty cool move, And, I mean, I still do it off the top rope now, It's like, but yeah, it's some guys call it the Hurricane Rana, but it's the same thing,
So after your first run in WCW, you went to WWF at the time. What led to you jumping ship?
Oh, that was the time when Bill Watts took over, So we got, we saw how he was trying to fuck everybody, And so we had an opportunity to go. Unfortunately, we didn't realize that. It's the same time Vince was going through that lawsuit, with the government, So it actually ended up being a bad time to go up there,
And what was your first meeting with Vince McMahon like?
Oh, he said we would make more money than we ever did in the wrestling business.
And I guess he didn't follow through on that promise.
No, shit. All of his money was going to paying the lawyers, keep him out of jail, So first time we, he wasn't paying us, so we left after 10 months and signed a pretty good deal with Japan, you know, for 2 years.
During that time you were there, one of the feuds you had was with Money Incorporated, Mike Rotundo and Ted DiBiase. You had a lot of good matches with them. Any memories of that feud?
No, those guys were always easy to work with, you know.
And what about the Quebecers?
Yeah, I mean, they were good too. They had some, you know, pretty good heat, you know. They were pretty good.
I was told a story by one of the Quebecers that there was a European tour at one point and everyone was getting kind of rowdy, and Tiger Jackson, who was playing Dink at the time, ended up being tied up in the lunchroom before one of the events at an arena, and you and your brother were throwing some food at him, and apparently, according to Carl Willett, who told me this, Jacques came in and threw an apple at you guys. It just missed you, and the apple kind of exploded on a pole above your head, and that led to an all-out food fight. Do you have any recollection of that incident?
The food fight I remember is like we were in France. No, we were in Italy, and the food was terrible. I couldn't believe the catered food, you know. We were just, that was like at the end of the tour, and we were kind of pissed, you know. And so I was like, I just ended up grabbing some food and started throwing that hacksaw Jim Duggan. He grabbed the table, put it up like for protection, and it was all a war. And it's like, I mean, that lunchroom got destroyed. The funny thing about it was like they didn't know why we were, you know. I mean, it was food everywhere, and the caterers were going, why the crazy Americans throwing food like that? But the food was terrible, and it was like a bad time, you know. It was like we were pissed because we were on the road so long. We were, you know, so that's how we took out our aggression that day, you know.
So you ended up leaving the WWE because you weren't making the money that you were promised, and you went to Japan.
Well, nobody was making money, man. I mean, everybody was. I mean, it was a really bad time to be up there, you know.
So you had a stint in Japan, quite a long one, before you ended up going back to WCW. Any memories of that time in Japan? I know your tag team is one of the greatest tag teams in the history of Japanese wrestling and wrestling in general. But, I know you had a lot of great matches during that time.
Yeah, I think probably I mean, we had a lot of, you know, because, you know, that's a different style of wrestling over there, you know. But I think the biggest thing we had over there was when we wrestled in North Korea, Pyongyang, 170,000 people 3 nights in a row, you know. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, the people, it was so far. It was in the Olympic Stadium, you know, and the people were about that big, you know. It was so far up there. You know, 170,000 people. That's, you know, that's a lot of people. So, plus the 3 nights in a row, you know. So that's probably the thing that sticks out the most. I mean, because the place was communist, you know.
Yeah.
And we were being watched the whole time. And one guy made a phone call to his wife, and he said, "Man, this place sucks." And as soon as he said that, the phone went dead, and he lost his phone privileges for the, you know, rest of the tour. And then we'd leave the hotel because, I mean, it was so, you know, everything was so all propaganda, you know. So they only had so many different shows on TV, you know. So we got sick of the place, so we would want to go out and walk, you know, and like people would be following us the whole time, you know. So. But it was pretty cool. Muhammad Ali was there with us. It was a pretty big event, you know.
Did you get a chance to talk with Muhammad Ali at all? I know he was probably gone a little bit.
Yeah, he you know, he had the onset of the, you know, of the disease, but he could, you know, he's moving slow. But man, once we got to the steps, because we went to visit the king and where his tomb was, you know, it was like he ran up all those stairs, you know. It was pretty amazing. He was moving pretty good, you know.
So after Japan, I think you still kept going to Japan here and there, but you ended up back with WCW.
Yep.
Who recruited you back to WCW at that time?
We had been gone for a couple of years, so we just was ready to come back.
And would Eric Bischoff have been running things at that time?
Yeah, he was in charge.
Were things better in the dressing room in that era?
Yeah, and that was like 96, 90, when we came back, and that was, I think like 6 months later, Nash and Scott Hall came in, and then NWO, and things just took off,
What did you get along with those guys when they came in from WWE?
Nash and Hall? Yeah, I've known Nash for a long time. He's from Michigan, so we always been, been my same part, so same city, so same state, so we've always gotten along, So Scott Hall was a good dude too, I mean, he's got his demons, but he's still a good guy,
Was there a lot of partying going on in that era with the wrestlers?
Yeah.
I don't just mean hard drug. I mean, was it kind of like a...
Oh, it was one big party, yeah. That was an amazing time in wrestling. You'll never go back to that.
And during that time, you ended up breaking up with your brother as partners and becoming a single star, and that's when your career really exploded. Is that something you had been wanting to do for a while at that point, or was that an office decision?
No, it was about time to do it, because we had wrestled everybody there is to wrestle, and it was getting pretty boring, because there weren't a whole lot of teams left for us to. And it was this time, so it just worked out,
And cutting your hair and going for the look that you still have now, is that something you came up with as well?
Yeah, I didn't tell anybody, until the night of I was going to turn. Because I did it, or that was Sunday night, and the next night was going to be Nitro. I didn't tell anybody until Sunday night that I was going to do it, and then Monday morning I went, and then I showed up for Monday Night Nitro with blonde hair, So a lot of people didn't even recognize me,
And it was around this time too you started to become really known for your promos, and you hadn't really had the opportunity to talk much before that. Did you always know that you had the promo skills in you?
Yeah, but I enjoyed being a heel better, being a bad guy a lot better, so it just came, I mean, I like doing it a lot better, so it was easier for me to do heel promos, It's easy for me to make the people hate me,
Right. You would say heel is more your natural personality.
Yeah. Well, in that time it was,
And do you think WCW kind of dropped the ball not having a bigger feud between you and your brother at the time of the breakup?
Well, I didn't really want to go against my brother that much, I mean, we did a couple matches, but that was I don't want to make it, I didn't want to really feud against. I didn't want that to be my turn, you know what I mean?
Right. So things were going great, and you eventually ended up getting the World Championship, and the belt meant a lot at that time. Were you happy when you finally won it?
I mean, yeah, anytime you win a world title or world tag team, it's a great feeling, but there's also, still a lot of responsibility, you still got to draw ratings, you still got to draw a crowd, so there's still pressure, I mean, because, some guys win a world title and the ratings go down, so then, but, no, anytime you win a world title is a good thing,
And speaking of ratings, there was a lot of pressure for ratings in those days. And I heard a lot of stories that WCW was a last-minute company changing what was going to happen on the show at the very last second before the show started, did you find that happened to you a lot?
Oh yeah, that was fucking Hogan. He was a piece of shit. You know, we all had to wait for him to come in, you know. Like I was wrestling, I was first match one night, and then 10 minutes before the show starts, I don't know who I'm wrestling or anything, you know. And like 5 minutes before the show starts, I find out who I'm wrestling at, you know.
So the Hogan thing, it didn't start now. I mean, it's kind of started back then, and it wasn't just you. I've heard it from a lot of people that there was a lot of animosity against him in the dressing room at WCW.
Well, you gotta understand, Hogan's in real life. I think I proved that when I started twitting. He's a fucking cunt, man. He would always tell who would win, who would lose. He would always try to keep his thumb on everybody, you know. But back in WCW, it was like, you know, it was hard to, you know, because he had a lot of power. He gave him and Bischoff, you know, and it's like, and they disguised it more, you know. But once in TNA, they were, I don't know, arrogance or whatever. They just came in and buried everybody, you know. Back then, yeah, he did the same shit, you know, keeping his thumb on. Didn't want hardly anybody to get over, you know. He's a fucking cunt.
Were you happy when Eric Bischoff was gone the first time from WCW?
Well, I had always seemed to get along with Eric, you know, but I mean, he'd be a prick sometimes, but you know, not around me, you know. And then when they both came down to TNA, it's like they had a whole, you know, they were just pricks. They didn't give a shit, you know. It's like, fuck you, you ain't gonna, you know. And at that point, I had enough, you know.
So what was your reaction when Vince Russo took over? Did you think WCW was going to improve at that point, or did you think it was just kind of grasping at straws?
No, at the time when he came in, he basically, WCW actually kind of stole them, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and
so you had high expectations.
Yeah.
That he would help the company.
Yeah.
And around that time, you gave a bit of a controversial promo involving Diamond Dallas Page and Kimberly Page. Do you remember what led to that?
Well, it was simple. It was like she was a Nitro girl, and she thought she was a big part of the show. She thought she was a big star, you know. She actually said she thought, you know, girls were, you know, a big part of the show. You know, it's like, are you fucking kidding me? You know what I mean? So, I never had a problem telling the truth, you know.
Yeah. And I guess he had a problem with you basically saying what was pretty much the truth, that it was the stars drawing the ratings, and I guess he attacked you.
No, what happened, I had actually, after I got done doing that promo, it was like, you know, you go backstage and it's all dark. Because I had to go from there right to the interview set. I had an interview set because I had to interview, go through the dark tunnel, go to an interview set with me and Gene Oakland, and me, Buff, and Lex, you know. So, so I go through I'm going through the dark tunnel. He said something to me, you know, and I just double-legged him, and it was, you know, went to go punch him, and security was on me. What he had done, he had told the security he was going to do it, and he said, if anything happens, jump on him, you know. So before I even got a chance to punch him,
so he already covered his back.
Yeah. So.
Were you?
Because I mean, the security guys were, you know, I mean, they were older at the time, and they weren't that fast, you know. And so, I mean, I took him down like that and was going to rear back to punch him in the face, and they had to grab my arm, so, you know, they were there, you know.
What finally calmed that situation down? Because obviously, I mean, if someone did that to me, I'd still hold a bit of a grudge if I didn't get to actually punch him in the face.
Well, I was going to rip his eye out, you know, but they grabbed that too, you know. So, but you know, him being friends with Bischoff, they smoothed it out, you know.
There's also a story from around the similar time that he threw a television screen at Terry Taylor. Is there any truth to that rumor?
Probably. You know.
Yeah. It was a rough time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was this. I mean, things would be, you know, it's so chaotic down there. You know, it's like it was brutal. You know.
And one day, in your time at WCW, towards the end of it, you came out and on live TV you gave a shoot promo on Ric Flair, and obviously you'd held those feelings for a while. What finally made you snap that night and go out and basically...
Well, but that was in the NWO, you know. So we'd go out and kind of interview on anybody, any time, you know. It didn't have to make sense, you know. At NWO, we'd attack everybody, you know. I mean, I just, you know, I said, fuck it. I just say, do the interview on Flair. I don't, you know. I think it was like so close to the truth, you know. Everything I said, you know. And so, you know, after I did that, I expected, you know, maybe a confrontation in the back, you know. Like I go back and somebody said he went in the room and started crying, you know. So, fuck him. And then him and his buddies, you know, J.J. Dillon was a motherfucker, tried to get me fired, you know. First they tried to spend me, take my money, which didn't work, you know. They tried to get me fired. But that's the politics back, that's the way it was back then, you know.
Kevin Sullivan told the story that he was genuinely scared that there was going to be a showdown with you and Flair, and I guess Kevin had talked to you at one point.
A showdown? Flair's a fucking pussy. As a matter of fact, the next day we were doing taping of Thunder, you know, and that's when they had told me, you know, like, oh, we're going to send you home, we're suspended, you know, and so I just fucking time off, you know. So I was walking through the parking lot back in, and Flair comes up, and I said, you motherfucker, I was going to punch him then, you know, and he starts running, you know. I didn't have nothing to do with it, you know what I mean? What do you mean you didn't know? Why you know about it then if you don't have nothing about it, you know, because you're just getting to the building, you know. So, no, he was...
And not too long after that, that was the end of WCW. Did you have any idea it was going to be the last Nitro, the day that you showed up in Panama City?
There was 2 weeks before, no, you know. Actually, we really didn't know until we got there, you know. But there had been rumblings that, you know, it was going to be sold, you know. Because that's when, there's other factors, you know, like, because AOL was involved at that time, you know. And they got rid of baseball and the basketball, so. But that was all a shady deal. I always thought that was a shady deal, how Vince got control of that, you know. So, but no, we didn't really know until we got there, you know.
So do you think, what do you think ultimately led to the end of WCW? Was it the AOL deal, or
it was just a whole bunch of different factors, and the fact that we were losing money too, you know. Like, I don't know how you lose money when you're selling out almost everywhere you go, you know, drawing the ratings that you were drawing, you know. And it's like, fucking Bischoff and Hogan fucked that all up.
So you let your contract run out when you were finished, and then you ended up going to WWE again, and the WCW guys that had been there before you, all of their careers were pretty much brought down because they destroyed most of the WCW guys. Were you fearful of that at all going in?
Well, it was on my mind, you know. But at the time, you know, I had nerve damage in my foot, so I really wasn't really planning on going, you know. But they made me an offer that was, you know, pretty good, so I took it, you know. And they knew my foot was bad, you know. And you know, I did what I could do, but you know, they obviously took personal that we had beaten them for 83 weeks straight, you know. So they wanted to show who was a better company, you know. So they treated everybody the same and basically like shit, you know. Me, Kevin, Nash, and you know Goldberg, they all basically treated the same way, you know.
And you worked with Stephanie McMahon a bit when you first came in. You have any memories of what that was like?
You know, that was Triple H's wife, so you know, and it was Vince's daughter, so it was basically just an extension of Vince, you know.
So it wasn't too fun having to do the thing, was it?
No, I had preferred to go on, you know, a different show. I didn't really want to go on Raw rather than go on SmackDown, you know. But they wanted to push me to wrestle Triple H, you know. So.
And did you enjoy your feud with Triple H?
I mean, nah, not really, you know. I mean, it was all right, but it was like, it was all so one-sided, you know. So.
At one point, I know you had a lot of animosity towards him. Is that kind of smoothed over now?
Well, I really didn't have.
Maybe it was more out of proportion what people were saying.
Well, it was like, I didn't, you know, I was up there with, you know, bad ankle with nerve damage, you know, but I didn't find out what was being said until I left, you know, and then he went in a newspaper and said some stuff about me, you know, so I just said some stuff about him, you know, my trash talking was better than his, you know.
And then you went to your first run in TNA from there. Was that more enjoyable than your second run?
In TNA?
Yeah. Was it a paycheck for you just basically collecting?
I mean, when I first went in, it was like, that's when, you know, Jeff was running everything. It was like, that was before they had to deal with Spike TV, you know. There was another place to work and another place to try to get going, you know. And then, you know, we just tried to make it another place where you can make money, you know. And it was doing good.
Do you remember any matches that you particularly enjoyed from that first run in TNA?
No, I think the thing that really kind of caught on with the fans and the people and brought the ratings up was the Main Event Mafia. That was probably the best time in there, you know. And then they just killed that for whatever reason, you know. So, and then 2 months later, Hogan and Bischoff came in and they just tried to kill everything, you know.
And Russo was kind of back in the mix of things writing in TNA when Jarrett was running it and was still writing for them until recently. Do you think he learned from some of his WCW mistakes in his TNA writing? Because a lot of people are always confused why he had a job for so long after the WCW mistake, so there must have been some positives to it.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to write a show, you know, week after week, you know, but his hands were tied a lot too, you know. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes too, you know.
So you did depart TNA once. What was that about? Just it was time to move on?
Or? When I left right after Main Event Mafia. Yeah. Well, that was when Hogan and Bischoff came in. And they, you know, freaking buried everything, you know. So then what happened is that when we were gone, and they wanted to bring back something that, you know, drew the ratings. So they contacted me, Kevin, and Booker again, you know. and they, you know, offered a shitty contract. You know, it's like they actually said to my guy, he said, "Well, we'll give you this contract, see if you can get over." They said it to me and Kevin, and I was like, "All right, motherfucker, you can see if I can get over." Okay. It kind of pissed me off, but it was like, I don't, you know, I'll prove myself again, you know. And then, what happened was it pissed off Kevin and Booker, and they told them to fuck off, and they went off and did the Royal Rumble, you know. So that kind of pissed off the people at Spike TV, you know, because they were going to be promised it. Because, you know, if you remember, like they promoted like us coming back, you know, for a good 2 months, you know. And then they, Booker's still up there, and Kevin's, you know, still with the Legends contract. So that pissed a lot of people off on Spike TV, you know. So.
And a lot of people thought you were fired from TNA, and that's what led to the whole stuff that's going on with Bischoff and Hogan now. But you were offered a contract, right?
Yeah, they offered me extension in November. They offered me one in December and January, and I never signed them, you know. Because at that point I could see what was going on, you know, and it's like that's when it was really starting to piss me off, you know. And I really started to find out what pieces of shit Bischoff and Hogan really were, you know. And they were pissing me off because they were like doing it to my friends, you know, like guys that you were trying to build TNA with Rude and AJ and especially Kurt Angle, you know. I mean, he went on, you know, in the media markets on radio and they were burying them, you know. And they really didn't understand it, like, I mean, because it makes no sense, you know what I mean? Yeah. But if you've been around it before, you realize what's going on, you know, and they couldn't really relate to what was going on because, like, why would you do that, you know? So I had enough, you know. So yeah, and that's what led me to start telling the truth about, you know, Bischoff and Hogan, and they didn't really like it, you know. 'Cause I warned him. I told him it was not gonna be nice, man. I told him that, and I told that to Bischoff, and fuck him. It's still not over, you know. I'll see those guys again.
So I know a lot of people misunderstand and they think it's a personal thing, but in reality, you're just worried about the company. You feel that its future is in jeopardy.
Oh, it's definitely in jeopardy, you know. I mean, look, they're losing money, and its ratings are bad, and it's like, how can you not look at those two guys, you know? They haven't performed, you know what I mean? Everybody's got to, you know, got to perform, you know, and how come they're not accountable for, you know, the shit that they're putting on TV, him pushing his son, fucking Hogan pushing his fucking cunt, worthless daughter who can't sing or dance, you know? And it's embarrassing, man. So.
And ratings have not moved since all those big stars were brought in, like.
Yeah, I mean, and they're losing money because they got to pay their, you know, their contract. I mean, no way would that work in a normal business setting. You know what I mean? I mean, they've been there for almost 3 years now, and they haven't done anything to spike the ratings. Like, that would not work in a normal, you know, if you don't perform, you lose your job. You know, it's like, but they're just, you know, they know how to talk to.
They know how to talk to Dixie.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they haven't been let go, I guess, because they haven't performed. There's no evidence that.
I mean, it's like, it's in black and white, man. It's ratings are what drives wrestling. You know, it's always been like that, and for that to like turn their back on, you know, they always, you know, Bischoff and Hogan always seem to brag, oh, we beat WWE 82 weeks straight, you know. Yeah, we beat them because Nelson ratings said we beat them. Well, now that meant something back then, but they don't mean something now. You know what I mean? So why are you ignoring the Nielsen ratings now? You know, and it's just a crock of shit.
They even draw under a 1 from time to time. What do you think? If you were in charge of TNA, if somebody finally fired Hogan and Bischoff and said you were in charge. What do you think it's salvageable? What would you do to
Yeah,
save the company?
I mean, that's like there would be so much work because they've actually tore down everybody's character. I mean, they haven't done anything to build anybody up. They just, you know, it would be so much work to bring, you know, to overhaul it. You know, name one person that they really enhanced their career or enhanced their character. I mean, it's, you know, it's ridiculous how bad it is. You know.
People still don't know what TNA is.
Well, there's a lot of people that don't watch it, and it's understandable. I mean, it's brutal.
I can sit through 10 minutes of WWE, but I can't sit through 30 seconds of TNA. Did you work with Bruce Pritchard at all before?
No, fuck no. He was a fucking gopher before with Vince, and it's like somehow he convinced he was like Vince's right hand man. Are you fucking kidding me? That is a fat motherfucker.
So does the whole thing with TNA now kind of keep you out of the whole thing with Jeff Jarrett in India, or is that still?
I have no idea. I really, you know, I don't know what's going on with that because that was a separate deal, you know.
And just for your wrestling career, you've had such a long career, and you were part of one of the greatest tag teams of all time, and then you had a phenomenal singles career. How do you want to be remembered overall as a wrestler? What would you like fans to remember you as?
Well, fans come up to me all the time and, you know, thank me for the entertainment. I just want to entertain, you know. I just want to piss people off so they either come to see me get beat or beat somebody up, you know. So.
And the last question I have for you is, you're such a tough guy, such a scary guy and all this, but do you have any fears? Are you afraid of anything?
Yeah. No, not a whole lot.